Hello, and welcome back to my mini-series about the upcoming tactical survival horror shooter, The Forever Winter. Last episode, we looked at the poster mech of the game, known as Toothy, a rogue VI, hell-bent on its own survival in this post-apocalyptic warzone. Today, I'm going to discuss the mech influences seen in the game. As mentioned in the previous episode, I was given the opportunity to speak to Kai Lim, one of the concept artists and gameplay designers on The Forever Winter, and during our chat, I wanted to ask about the many different mechs that are shown in the cinematic and gameplay trailers that have been released so far. As a direct quote on the question of design influences, Kai said the following: "On mechanical design inspiration, while we give many nods to famous, genre-defining 80s and 90s IPs on the surface as fans, we hope our design sensibility also serves as our own commentary, and is the layer beneath it. Fatalistic and cynical endgame with dark humour thrown in. It's a big vibe aesthetic element within our world design sensibility and speaks to the rationale behind the why, how, and when these machines were created in universe, timeline-wise. The Ultra-Hind AI pilot to co-pilot relationship is an example of this. Some of you might notice some familiar form functions to the blocky mecha approach in titles such as Front Mission, for example, or one of my own personal favourite mechas from Konami of all places, Ring of Red. A more realistic and believable form for these war machines that adds to this atmosphere and the tone of the game. The Ultra Hind, as Kai mentions, is a hybrid machine resembling the real-world gunship, but here, in the Forever Winter, the Ultra Hind is controlled by a virtual intelligence, navigating the battlefields, scanning for targets which are then destroyed by its human gunner, their only function in this machine being to choose which weapon to use and pull the trigger. A cold, almost inhuman combination that speaks to this nihilistic degree that the war has taken humanity as it continues to fall further into madness and despair. Kai's art shows a brutalist approach to the mechs, harsh but functional, perfectly fitting with the environments that have been created for the game. As a fan of Battletech, I was shown how his influences from things like the Clan Elemental armor inspired some of his own work, and looking at the art that he's produced for games like Front Mission Evolved, you can see some of that bleed into the design of Toothy, as shown in episode 1 of the series, but also when you see the larger mechs from the gameplay trailers and cinematics. Kai continues in a post-interview following up, "Not all factions follow a more conventional form follows function approach. Euraska, borrowing from Southeast Eurasia's tech, is such an obvious excuse to cut loose and pander to our auger mecha fabrication fantasies and feed into the horror aspect, as you noted. Toothy's point defense mites, the massive Eurasian and Euraskan octo-engineer, to the anime-inspired Mother Courage units in the trailer, in a dark future where so much of battlefield technology has been mastered, and all that was left for some factions is nihilistic expression. This is our version of that conclusion." I mean, personally, I love seeing these distinct elements, and those Mother Courage units are extremely unsettling. I mean, does she eat you or something worse? I'll go more into the factions a little bit in the final part of this series, but as a final quote from Kai to give a little more context. "Eurasia was designed with a more multi-role nature and robust interoperability, versus Europa, which has more clearly defined battlefield roles, and they're behind the tech curve, so it's more technology born out of desperation. Again, now that the Forever Winter is in its dark ages of the timeline, that things have started to turn into a utility stew, with both sides now a shadow of their former selves." From speaking to the team post-interview, I was also given some more insight into the visual influences of Europa's mecha from Fundog Studios CEO Miles Williams, who told me that his focus was primarily the European factions, who we see majorly in the footage available so far. As a faction, Europa is largely visually influenced by Mech, or Maschinenkrieger, and the film Virus, R.I.P. Donald Sutherland. The Virus influence can be seen in the horror hybrid form of human and machinery, seen in things like the cybernetic zombies from the trailers being dropped from the air in mass waves. These shock troops, I can imagine, form waves of bullet sponges to allow the European troops to move forward or even beat a hasty retreat. Maschinenkrieger influences several units which I have seen art for, but for obvious reasons can't discuss or show, but the rounded forms of the model kits from the Mech series shown here certainly inform a style of some of the units that you'll eventually see in the game. Finally, the CG trailer showing the European pilot has a distinct beak-like head, which I'm told is a nod to the works of Yutaka Izubuchi, a famed artist who's worked on Gundam and Jinro anime, creating famous units some of you might know, such as Sazabi and Victory Gundam, for instance. Miles stresses that compared to the Eurasian forces, the Europans are a little behind the curve technologically, and these influences speak to that visually. The Forever Winter then has a strong aesthetic that draws from numerous sources to create its own take on a sci-fi mecha apocalypse, one where humanity has discarded its ethics in pursuit of total victory. Us or them, victory or death, the cost in lives being tertiary to the goal. People are a resource, a means to an end. The war in this game has led to the creation of terrifying machines ranging in size from power armor up to massive building-destroying nightmares equipped with weapons large enough to punch holes in skyscrapers. As the game marketing says, you aren't this guy. You're this guy. And the best you can hope for is to get enough supplies to live another day in the Forever Winter. Thanks once again everyone for watching. I have one more video planned for this series based on my interview with Kai Lim, and once again, if you like the look of the game, I do encourage you to go check it out over on Steam, wishlist it if you like what you see at the link below, and keep your eyes peeled for any information coming from the game's official website and Discord and other social media sources. Until then, have a good day all, and we'll see you next time. Bye bye.